You're live on the cloud. Now what? The journey is just beginning. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm very excited to be joined by Jason Schober and Tiffany Cleaver, two outstanding leaders from our team here at Huron. And today we're going to be talking about cultivating a transformational mindset, something that clearly is important. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about it, but we want to dive into that a little bit deeper and see how it applies to the disruption or change your institution might be facing today. So to start that, Jason, can you just help us understand a little bit from your perspective, how is cloud different than on-prem, and why is cloud so important right now?
Sure, that's a great question, Kyle. I think the number one thing that I would say is that moving to cloud, particularly for your major systems like finance, student, HR, other systems that might be used throughout higher education and healthcare, are really like getting into a buy situation rather than a build model. And so you really have to be prepared to partner with your application providers in a way that is totally different from how people might have worked before. The users will see a more modern look and feel. People like to compare it to Amazon sometimes versus what you might have had previously. You might be able to use it on a mobile application, but the bigger changes are really happening behind the scenes in your organization, whether that's how you affect the technical part of the organization or what you have to do in order to stay current with the applications over time. There's a lot of change going on beneath the surface. With COVID going on right now, we certainly see people looking for cloud to be a source of efficiency and ideally recurring savings. And for them to achieve that, they really have to take a very different approach that changes the way that they do business, not just changes their software.
I think those are, some really important points to think about, right? And I especially focus on the last one you mentioned, which is it's a whole different way of doing business. It's a whole different approach. And to go along with that, certainly we think that we need to change our mindset. So, Tiffany, can you help us understand what is a transformational mindset?
Yeah, absolutely, Kyle. And I'm going to pick up kind of on Jason's last points. I think the first is really understanding what's a transformational change. And really some of the key indicators of a transformational change are items, there are changes that are triggered by disruption. There's definitely a focus on being more efficient. And with that type of change, then we need to have a transformational mindset as well. So what does that mean? Right? It's not just saying to people, we're going to put in a new cloud application and you're going to do it, right? It's really putting together a very strong organizational vision. What do you want your organization to look like? What are the principles by which your organization is going to operate? And that vision is really driven by senior leadership and line leaders, right? From the very top sponsors all the way down to supervisors and managers who are supporting sponsors in all of this. And so those are the key elements of that mindset, really starting at the top at all levels, believing in that, so that, again, when change comes, whether it's a disruption from something globally like COVID or as Jason mentioned too, right, the cloud provider is going to disrupt your business every quarter, 2 times a year, with changes, right, to the technology, and therefore to your business processes or to the way that you operationalize that.
I love that description that you just provided, because it sounds like such a comprehensive organizational vision of what the future looks like, right? And I love the all-inclusive nature of that. It's the line leader down to the individual employee all the way back up to the top. So understanding a little bit more about what that is, Jason, why is it so important? And perhaps you can connect it back to our discussion about how cloud is different than on-prem, and then why this mindset is so important to success there.
Over time, organizations have built up habits, where they put in an application, maybe they spend a year or two doing it, spend a large capital outlay, and then they have to maintain it. But even that goes in a cycle of maybe every 2, 3, 4 years, depending on the organization. With cloud, you are going to get a new version 2 to 4 times a year, depending on who you partner with, and you need to take it. There is only one code line for all customers. You can certainly turn some features off or turn them on so you have some control, but that changing of your habits that might have been formed over a couple of decades is a significant shift. I think some customers, particularly at the early time of that change, just feel like they're always in a constant state of flux. And that's where I think this transformational mindset really comes into play. You almost have to flip the whole thing on its head and say, I am partnering with my software vendor. My time that I spend with them is crucial to be able to influence what features they're going to work on next. Now it really is sort of you're always going to be doing something, and you're paying, to get that software that does keep up and keep you competitive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an imperative. It's a requirement. It's not an option in this new world. So, with that being said, Tiffany, what are a couple quick tips that you could offer to institutions, to leaders, about how they can sustain this mindset? So it's not a one-time shift. It's something that is incorporated into, their routine operations.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it starts back with that overall vision, right, that people have, and being very strong on that. One thing we really focus on with our clients as we're working with them through their cloud changes is really, educating, the executive leadership all the way down to those line leaders, those daily supervisors, on how to model and how to reinforce that vision and those principles in everything that they do. It has to work for the institution as a whole. So I think that is definitely the core element. There's also little things we do along the way too when we partner with our clients. We look to set up change networks, right, that include individuals from every school, unit, department across the healthcare organization or institution, making sure that they're meeting on a monthly basis. And even as you go live, it might be on a quarterly basis or an every other month basis, so that the mechanism is in place to consistently and constantly roll out change. The other is transparency, right? And putting in those tools and mechanisms that allow for transparency. One of the first things that can derail your entire implementation or your entire transformation effort is if some people feel they're not getting the full story and they feel others are, and people feel like they're all getting the same message. So some of those little things that are really important, but most important, as I said, is truly that sponsorship and reinforcing and modeling that vision in everything that you do.
Well, Tiffany, thank you for those thoughts. And Jason, thanks for your perspective as well. I really appreciate your time today and look forward to our next conversation. We hope this session helped you see through the clouds. See you next week.